I guess I can kick it off. I think, Gen Z is one of those groups that, was born in the digital age, right? We're all digital citizens, but they're that supercharged generation, and Hikari and Marissa can speak to this, where, the phone or the iPad were sort of born, in their hands. If you walk in Central Park, you see all of the babies with their iPads. It's like they're technology first more than any other generation. And so in terms of being purpose driven, they're turning to technology to understand the world around them. And so brands have to be very intentional with how they show up with campaigns. It can't be one off, because this generation is searching to understand, is this authentic? Is this true? You can't do something one time and then say this is part of your mission. And so with Gen Z, you have to come correct.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. And I guess with the panelists, like any other thoughts or perspectives around influencer marketing and representation? Qianna, I think you brought up a fantastic point around Gen Z, and that's a topic I'm really excited to dive more into. But I guess any thoughts, guys?
If I can add to it, I was just going to say, as a brand, I think you really kind of have to understand who you are and really kind of be true to that brand. And really, in terms of outreach, I mean, I think a lot of the brands that I currently work for, and Moschino being one of them, we've always sort of communicated in a message of inclusivity. And I think that's just something that we've been discussing for a long time. I think a lot, maybe even before it became such a mainstream sort of topic. But I think also inclusivity needs to go beyond sort of the communication level. We have to also then expand it into what the products that we offer, the sort of the way we live our lives. And that also then goes back into just the actual clothing itself. I mean, I think for the first time too, as a designer brand, we've kind of introduced to the market something a little bit more price inclusive as well. So it's really inclusivity at all levels and sort of a discussion at all levels, because you can communicate all day long, but you have to be able to then reach someone physically as well with a product.
Yeah, I think, inclusivity is, with Black Lives Matter, I think that brought a lot of conversations to the forefront, and you started just seeing different patterns. You've had the rainbow washing, brands just, trying to tap into different, moments with different groups. And is this part of your core? Is this part of your core identity, or are you just trying to push product? And I think that Gen Z truly understands, like, is this, are you selling something because you want to make change? Are you a change agent, or is this about a bottom line? And I think that, just with brands after Black Lives Matter, we also saw, the tide sort of going down. And I think that with being purpose driven, it's something that has to you want to see it within a company, within their employee framework. How is a business supporting their employees, right? And then how is it coming across also through their products? It's every touch point. It's the marketing campaigns. And so I think that it's an exciting time, because brands who are doing it right, you're seeing it carry across in every vertical. And that's really exciting.
Yeah, and a follow-up question there is just, because you touched on a really good point, right? With going beyond just the idea of like just selling your services, just conducting business as usual. But I guess, the question is like, is looking for a purpose or having a key purpose the right fit for every brand? And if so, how should brands go about really selecting or defining their purpose as a company?
I mean, it starts, I think that brands who aren't, and as CNBC did a great study just looking at brands who made a commitment during Black Lives Matter, like a check-in, and Apple was part of that list. And in terms of diversity within Apple, it has not changed. And so they definitely were part of the failed list. And so it's like companies who are making multi-million-dollar pledges, but then perhaps the structure of the organization hasn't changed. So I think you should start making small changes. It starts with your HR and how are you supporting internally? Because I think that employees, you saw with Adidas, right? Like Adidas did, a lot of employees rallied and wanted to make change there. And so you can listen to your staff, listen to your consumers. And so change can be incremental as well. And so it's like having expectations. You're not going to have, a 360 overhaul, but you can absolutely start incorporating, a mission and a purpose and being more intentional with, how you market your company, how you cast your campaigns, what type of products and services you're putting out there, the programs that you support. Like, everyone here is from the Career Creator Club, and we wanted to do something special in terms of Stop Asian Hate. And, that was something that, the team recognized that this was a moment happening, and we wanted to do something to support the Asian creator community. And so, but that's core to the AIC's mission. We're very intentional in representing creators of color. And I think that, but that's also part of our leadership team too. We launched with an African-American founder and an Asian chairwoman. So I think that it starts with your leadership first and foremost. You need to have leaders who have purpose. Being a purpose-driven leader is super important. And so perhaps companies also have to have a little earthquake too. So change can happen if you want it to.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, Qianna. It's something that I've been super passionate about, especially over the past year. I think what's happened with COVID, with George Floyd and all, Asian hate and all of that has made us realize that what we have in front of us is not what it needs to be. There's so much more that we could do together if we think more with purpose and we think more in intentionality. Other thing I wanted to add, I listened to this really great podcast by Cindy Gallup, and she always says really great provocative things. And one of the things she said was, we need to stop talking about diversity and the DEI factor, et cetera, and just, and she curses, of course, be diverse. So what Qianna said, like the Creator Council, the AIC is very much minded in terms of this purpose and this need for diversity and inclusion because the council is diverse. So how do you change your leadership within the company and be diverse? And then if you aren't one of the so-called diverse candidates, what are you doing immediately to uplift someone that has an opportunity to be seen in a more stronger light just because you want to help someone out, and perhaps them being diverse has been a disadvantage or they've been a cause for bias within the workplace. There's so much that could be done around that, but I do agree that what I do appreciate about what's happened over the past year is that companies have been forced to take a stance. You're either on the right side of history or the wrong side of history. Everyone's going to be on the right side, want to be on the right side of history, right? But it's more about what happens internally to build upon that, to ensure that your employees are feeling that commitment. And that part takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of effort and being very direct in terms of being diverse, hiring diverse talent, and then uplifting those people within the company to make sure that there's more diverse leadership.
Yep, that's a great point. I mean, it feels like, a lot of brands sort of went out with the big message of DE&I last year, and it was almost like they're washing their brand with that messaging. But there's one thing between saying it and a completely other thing through living it day in, day out. I guess Anna would love to hear like some of the steps um, your organization's taking, or you've seen others take that you feel like are the right sort of steps to just actually turn that into action within organizations, especially large organizations, right, where things just tend to move a lot slower, and there's much bigger ships to steer.
Yeah. I mean, so what we did internally at Saks is we started off, obviously we had a social post that's in most major brands, and we started a DEI council. And it was mostly comprised of internal top executives that primarily were people of color. However, there are some people that were super sympathetic to the cause that were part of the council as well. And we sort of divided up, what were the different pillars of our brand that needed to be really turned inside and out to understand how we could employ more DEI within the company. So really about purpose, people, brands. So we really divvied up the projects based on that. And then we hired a DEI officer, and we ensured that there were strategies attached to each of these initiatives, and that they were actually part of the executive leadership board's reviews, the performance reviews. So it was really about taking those stats where we needed to be and making sure that there were leaders that were being held accountable for that. So, and that's just a snippet of what we've done at Saks. There's still so much more we can do. There's still not enough, Black and brown people on top. And we've been very vocal about that and very public about that with a landing page on our website. But I do think, like you were saying, there are brands who are going out there and sort of washing their brand with this whole DEI, rainbow, colorblind, we love everyone type of situation. And I think it's just very important that each brand really looks within and tries to identify, what are those pillars that are so important to the company, and how do we turn them upside down to ensure there's more equity and equality within those spaces.
Definitely. And Khoa, would love to hear your take as well from the brand side, and maybe some moves you guys are taking, and just your overall perspective, especially working with so many fantastic, well-renowned luxury brands that have been around for a while.
Hi, sorry again. In terms of just, I think we kind of touched on it quite a bit, and just to expand a little bit, but it's all about knowing your brand and how to adopt. I mean, I think the way we do business today is so different than we've done in the past year. 2021 is so different from 2020. We, in terms of just overall messaging, we talked about inclusivity, and that's really kind of who we have been as a brand. And as I mentioned to you before, it's really all about sort of just not only communication, but it's also about the structure of the actual collections itself, and actually the business. Sorry. And then, sorry, can you repeat the question in terms of how?
Yeah, just steps you're taking as an organization to just turn the DE and I sort of focus into action, which it sounds like you've, from what you were mentioning earlier, you've really sort of internalized that as an organization. And what I really like that you called out was it's not just from a messaging standpoint, but it seems like it's really affected how you approach your supply chain and supply chain management, your pricing, in terms of go to market.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of a company, we've really kind of dissected it and really kind of looked back at like what we can do as a company to be sort of an all-inclusive company at all stages, really. So when you talk about the messaging, I think we're there. We've always been there. Mm-hmm. And then in terms of the actual product, I think that's really important to itself. Because at the end of the day, as I mentioned to you before, it's something about being tangible too. And I think, you can message all you want, but I think, you have to, your words have to turn into action, and it has to turn into something that people can actually touch and feel. And that's just kind of the society that we're in now. And I think it's an important aspect too as well. So as I mentioned, it's just about, taking a look at all your brands, dissecting it, and really just moving into a space where you are, one, more accessible, and hopefully it feels a little bit less, I guess, let's say, well, like not accessible in the sense that, I think a lot of times as designer brands, we've been, we've been in a sphere, a little bit of a bubble, where only a certain part of the community can interact. And that goes with fashion shows, that goes with certain shopping experiences. But at the end of the day, we need to kind of relook at, where we are as a brand. You can still be sort of a coveted brand, a brand that we all want to be a part of. But how do we then turn that into a more accessible field for everyone? And that's what we've really done as a company in terms of all the brands we look at. And I think it's the most sort of evident with Moschino in that sense too, as well. And as I mentioned, it's really, about product and getting it out there at in terms of just accessibility and price points.
And I would love in terms of like accessibility, I think in terms of like creators have the ability to make things accessible. And I would love maybe if Marissa wants to jump in and talk about incorporating some of, her Chinese street style content and, why she felt the need to sort of, make that part of her feed.
Yeah, so I definitely really, Chinese street fashion is a big part of my content and my TikTok. And I really just started it because I wanted people to, I guess, appreciate more of Chinese heritage. I feel like that's not something you really see. And over the past year, there was a lot of hatred towards Chinese people and Asians in general because of COVID. And I feel like starting this series really helped people see like Chinese culture from a more positive perspective. And I think it's really helped just create a lot of positive spotlight.
100%. I think, you're able to tap into a narrative from a real personal place. And, when I discovered your TikTok, it was like, oh my God, like I need all these clothes. And two, you celebrate not only the fashion, but also, it's a great way to just connect people who maybe never traveled to China, don't understand the street style scene. I've been fortunate to go to Hong Kong and Shanghai, so I love, Chinese street style, but people who haven't traveled, you sort of like take them on a journey. And that's one of the beautiful things about social and TikTok is that you get to like, travel and passport stamps, especially during COVID, you didn't have to leave. And that's one of the great things and sort of debunk myths, right? You sort of get to stop stereotypes too.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I've really realized is being in the influencer marketing industry is how much power we actually do have to as brands, as marketers, to be partnering with creators that can share that diverse message, because people, when they look at brands, seeing people that look like them, that tell diverse stories, it really portrays the brand in that inclusive light. And it's more than just saying, hey, we support LGBTQ. It's a very different thing to make sure that you're partnering with LGBTQ creators and influencers that could tell that brand story in their voice. And that resonates much better. And it's almost like you're, as a brand, showing instead of telling. Qianna, I'd love to hear a little bit about the origin story of the American Influencer Council. I think it was super interesting, just kind of the inspiration and what you're doing to bridge the gap between brands and creators to help drive that, that collaboration, but also build this more inclusive ecosystem.
Well, we're really a think tank of small businesses. And I think, 2020 was the year creators, stood up for themselves as American small business owners. I really feel that small businesses, including creators, are the lifeblood of the US economy. And creators have always struggled, with legitimacy and getting credit for what they contribute to this. This year, influencer marketing in terms of spend is set to reach, $3 billion, and next year globally $15 billion. And the AIC is really an association to advocate for these small business owners. And we launched on Global Social Media Day a year ago, and we just won Best Industry Initiative at the Influencer Marketing Awards last week. And we have just been fast and furious in terms of our initiatives and launching programs like the Career Creator Club, pairing nano, micro, and mid-tier creators with executive leaders in the Fortune 500 business community, because mentorship supports growth, and creators are scaling businesses but maybe have never had supply chain experience to scale their creator to consumer brands. And so we have professional advisors like Qianna and others to have a resource to tap in if you are building a brand that's commerce or apparel. There's just so many things. Like, I was a blogger who went into corporate, and I learned so much from the women I worked alongside from. And without those ladies who I knocked on their office door, hey, I need some help, I wouldn't be the professional I am today. And so I think it's really important to leverage this interconnected community that we have. And so our membership includes orgs and advisors, and we're a creator first council. And I think that there are so many people in the business community that want creators to succeed. And I think that is first and foremost truly special to tap into that.
Yeah, I just wanted to, share with Qianna what inspired me really about the program that she started here is a few years ago when I think I was a buyer at the time, we had an influencer come to Saks, and this is an influencer who now has millions of followers, and everyone knows who she is. But at the time, and it was literally just a few years ago, she was so enamored by what I did, and just couldn't fathom it. And meanwhile, she already had this huge brand, huge following, so much influence, able to be working with these huge brands, was still thinking about should I have a career at Saks? And meanwhile, I'm looking at her like, whoa, you are like an influencer celebrity. It's amazing that you asked me that, but it really, set off this sort of light bulb in my head, like, wow, there's so much that I think creators can really benefit from. And likewise, coming from the corporate side, in just having more mentorship and more collaboration and communication with people that have worked within established brands. Just being able to understand the perspective and the context and the expectations, I think is really important, because at the end of the day, a creator has his or her own business. So, you follow the rules of the business, regardless whether you like it or not. You have to set a vision, you have to set a plan to execute, you have to delegate some of that, you have to tweak and retweak and find your way. And that's exactly what we've been doing for, a company like Saks, and Khoa's been doing in his career at Aeffe for so many years. And so I think it's really important that there is just a more organized network that really supports these independent small business owners, for sure.
And like Khoa's a brand guardian, he's done some of the best work, Balenciaga, like the best brands ever. We can all study from him in terms of creative marketing. And creators are, acting as micro publishers. And so we all have something to learn from each other. And, we're big about knowledge sharing, because creators also are producing content in a way that most people could never understand. I could crank out, easily during Fashion Week myself, probably 300, 400 pieces of content. people like till my thumbs were like shaking and hemorrhaging. Like most people have no idea what you could do on a mobile phone or with a tripod. And I think that like taking some of that and like learning from someone who has, you know, an elevated point of view on production and marrying that and like getting that on your social channels only is going to help you elevate so that you can also upsell your work and also grow your business. And so we're all about just, you know, constantly trying to share tactics of ways that you can scale your business. And, you know, Hikari, she has her own, you know, growing business and has been tapping into our mentors too. I would love for her to chime in on what she's getting out of the program because you haven't spoken yet.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for having me. Yeah, I was gonna talk a little bit about creators having the purpose, having the mission, but definitely what I've gotten out of the mentorship program is, you know, we dove into our analytics, so knowing your numbers is really important, but also, and then I had a meeting with Patty, who's the SVP for Bye Bye Baby, and you know, she's really helping me narrow in on what my, you know, my brand mission statement is, because as creators, we have to look at ourselves as entrepreneurs. You know, we have to again have that, the goals and the missions. And we were talking about how Gen Zs, they care about what we care about. And it's not just Gen Z, it's about millennials too. You know, everybody can smell inauthenticity. Like they can smell it when we're not being ourselves, when we're kind of just pushing products or talking about something that we don't like. And so it's so important for us creators like myself and, you know, Marissa to really know what our purpose and mission is. But you know, in the beginning, it might not start off that way. In the beginning, it's like, oh, it's kind of for fun, everyone's doing it. And not to say it's not fun right now, but as we grow a community, especially, I realize it's more and more important to have the mission, have the goals, the goal setting. It's so important. So Patty is really helping me figure out what that goal setting is. You know, she said that she's work with a lot of creators and she knows how our minds work. We can kind of be all over the place. But you know, having mentors like her they're really going to help us set goals. Like let's keep on track. And so it's helping us learn a lot of like the business acumen side. And so that's been really helpful so far.
Yeah, and it sounds like similarly for brands, how they have to find their purpose. For you, like defining your purpose the same way any other business would, right? Your purpose, your values. And so, you know, and the AIC is fantastic because it really empowers, you know, the creator middle class and treats creators like businesses. And would love to hear, Hikari, from you too, is like, how do you approach partnering with brands? How do you do your diligence on them, right? You have this brand that you're building, you know, you have your audience, that's everything. And then of course, you know, one of the many ways creators are able to support what they create is through partnerships. But how do you make sure that you're finding brands or accepting deals from brands whose purpose aligns with yours?
Yeah, so we're, as creators, we're really in this unique position of being right in the middle. There's the brands and then there's our community, and I haven't really touched upon how important it is for us as creators to tap into our community, because that has been how I've tweaked a lot of my personal goals too. Like Anna, you mentioned, you tweaked and tweaked and tweaked, and I've been doing that for the past couple of years. But one thing that really stayed true or stayed with me all along is the community aspect. And so by staying connected with them, constantly talking to them and not at them, and like really kind of taking them along with me on this journey, I've pivoted from travel content to makeup to now, you know, motherhood. And so really taking them along that journey, and knowing what they like, the community likes, and fostering what I have there, really helped me figure out what my purpose is. And so this year, actually, what I haven't been as great is pitching myself to be. I've been blessed when brands do reach out to me, and I've been able to kind of go on their website and see what they stand for. I check their social media. You know, have they been working with what kind of influencers or what kind of messaging do they have? And so as a creator, I look very like closely at that. And so that's I basically try to marry what my mission is with their mission, and honestly it kind of goes off of instinct too. It has to just feel right. Honestly, it and again, the audience, they can tell, they can smell it, when it's just not, oh, that's kind of like, oh, she just did it for, I don't know, to get paid or something. And there's nothing wrong with creators getting paid. I'm all about creators getting paid, but we also need to keep in mind what our uh, goals are, and what is our personal mission and stuff. So I definitely look at their mission statement, and then does it marry with mine well? Can I tell a story? Because it's one thing to just like, here's a product and I really like it, but how does that incorporate with my lifestyle, my life? And it really depends on what kind of content you do create. But for me, as a lifestyle, motherhood, and kind of now I've tapped into a lot of like the Japanese American side of things, cooking and stuff like that. And so kind of, I just have to see if it marries well. And that's how I figure out if it's a good fit for both sides, so yeah.
I think that, that's an interesting question, because I think that, creators are realizing that their communities hold them to a high expectation. And so that, you have to research a brand. You have to really understand, who this brand is, what are their ethics, right? What's their track record? I always type in a brand name and then put scandal.
That's a good one. And actually, just to kind of, we were talking about the DEI portion of it, and it's so funny because in the last 2 years, when National AAPI month was one of the it things to do, I definitely got the most inquiries for May. And not that that's a bad thing, but I've realized it's like, oh, that kind of tells you something. It should be more spread out. It should be more, us as AAPI creators, we should really be included within the whole, I guess, brand mission and strategy and stuff. But yeah, so I was gonna say, I've noticed a lot of inquiries more in May because I am an AAPI creator. And so nothing bad, but I'm hoping that brands do now see it as, hey, let's include, different groups as part of the whole mission statement and strategy.
Yeah, that's a great call out. And it's interesting too, because I think from what we've seen, a lot of the decision making in terms of who the ideal influencer is from the brand side, it can be pretty subjective to just who that person is and who they think the brand needs to look like. And so what we're seeing over years was just this sort of unconscious bias just kind of floating through, where brands were, when they were going through lists of influencers, they'd say like, oh yeah, she's great, oh, she's not on brand, or she's not a fit, but it was a very arbitrary way. And we've definitely seen a huge spike in brands seeking out a diverse set of creators, being very conscious about it, and even making being more proactive in making sure that they're choosing those creators. But I think to your point, like the unfortunate part is like, it shouldn't just feel like a box checking exercise, and it shouldn't be a box checking exercise. It should be something that brands really internalize in just how they operate. It shouldn't, be every month, depending on whatever Heritage Month it is, that they feel like they're checking off a box and can forget about it, as opposed to an evergreen effort. I guess, Marissa, would love to hear your take from the creator side and what you're seeing from the various fashion brands that you work with.
Yeah, so I definitely see brands incorporating a lot more inclusion in terms of like body sizes and racial. Really easy for us, like especially as a member of Gen Z, to see if a brand is genuinely trying to make a change or just trying to be reactive and avoid backlash. But I feel like a brand that has done a really good job is Airy Real. With their campaign, they were really a leader in the movement of incorporating more body sizes. And then another brand that I think is doing a good job is Revolve. I've worked with them a lot, and they have gotten criticism for starting off as a brand that catered primarily to one specific size, but I see them really like focusing on creating relationships with influencers of more diverse sizes and inviting them to brand trips. And by just like reacting to comments and saying that they will make a change. And I think it just all shows how powerful feedback is from online consumers who are mostly Gen Z and like initiating this change.
Yeah, feedback is, that's what the consumers have a lot of power. And, I think that community management, you can sometimes, you can get, when consumers start going on to Twitter, watch out, no brand wants anything to get on the trends. So I think that consumers don't realize, how, or airline travel, right? I think like certain industries definitely know that they definitely have to be more purpose driven than others, for sure.
And then if I can just add to kind of maybe take this kind of full 360 in the sense that, take the Stop Asian Hate and turn it into a tool where we can basically use it to be more vocal in our community. And if there's any sort of silver lining, I think it's basically us as an Asian community getting together and being more vocal in general. And I just want everyone to remember that as Asian Americans, it's a very sort of large and broad sort of term, and everyone's journey is very unique. Mine as a Vietnamese American, Chinese American, Japanese American, it's very unique. And so we really, I think a lot of times growing up, we felt that our journey wasn't so unique, but it truly, truly is. And that we need to put into our work, into what we say and what we do. And I think that is all about being authentic too as well. And that's really going to be important in terms of how you reach out and how you portray yourself to different brands. So
I love that.
Yep. Yeah, it's a great point too, where it's how do we tell the individual stories and not and really understand that diversity really means diversity, right? Within the Asian community, there's so many different stories, there's so many different cultures and ethnicities and backgrounds within that. And so how do you tell it? And I think touching on the word authentic is really key. More than anything, right? How do we take this away from being a exercise of just checking off a box as a company and really building empathy and connection with audiences and with people, right? At the end of the day, I think what I personally realized just being in the industry is we're all people. The people, whether we're on the brand side, people are, it's made up of people. It's an organization. The creators are people. The customers are people. And so how do we focus on building that true sense of empathy and connection while also telling our stories? I think is this sort of big opportunity, and I think the AIC has done a fantastic job of helping connect those dots from brands to creators and provide that mentorship. And that mentorship, from someone that if I were in it would look like me or may have had the similar experiences that I've gone through, or can share their perspective to learn from. So I guess, Claire, I don't know if are we at time? Are we doing a Q&A?
If you want to add your last notes, that's totally fine. This has been such a fantastic session. So if anyone has any last closing words, go for it.
I think that it's very important to set an intention and to be purposeful with it in everything you do, for it to carry out on your social, in your workplace, with your friends, that it's not just siloed.
Yep.
Great. Thank you so much, Qianna, Khoa, Marissa, Anna, and Hikari for that fantastic session. I'm so glad your team was able to join us on the virtual stage, and I couldn't agree with you all more about the importance of authenticity and building purpose and inclusivity from within. And great job, Eric. Thank you so much for facilitating the discussion. I hope you all have a fantastic day, and I hope to see you again soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Khoa. Bye, Anna.
Bye. Bye,
Marissa.
guys.
Bye, everyone. So next up, we have Joanna Durr, who is the director of the